Hi, I'm Stephanie Raffelock, and I want to welcome you to my virtual book launch. Yay! I never thought it would be like this. In my fantasy, I had this frizzy hair done. My bangs were trimmed, not by me, and I'd be serving champagne and cupcakes. But we live in strange times. I know how those kids in my neighborhood feel that don't get to walk across a graduation stage with their friends. I know how they feel that they're not going to prom. I think we're all making sacrifices and dealing with the little losses and also looking for the silver lining in these crazy times we're living through. I believe in human beings. I believe in our potential, and I believe in our ability to adapt and to make change that is for the better. Unfortunately, with every birth, there comes labor pains, right? So this is my little labor pain sitting in my desk all alone, um, talking to a computer screen and hoping that somehow I convey my message to you. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel, please, please, please leave me a comment or a heart or a like or something so that I know that you were here. So I know that I wasn't alone in this part and that there were people out there that rallied round. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So the book that I'm launching into the world is called A Delightful Little Book on Aging. And it's a slim volume of essays, personal stories about the aging process, divided into 4 sections. I talk about how aging takes place against a backdrop of grief, how aging is a time of reclamation, going back and reclaiming some of those things that we gave up along the way while we were busy with the obligations of becoming adults. There are a lot of things to reclaim this time of life. My husband had a 37-year absence from playing the bass guitar. And now every night he goes upstairs after dinner and he plays his bass for a couple of hours. And because of the magic of the internet, he can play bass with just about any rock and roll band in the world. It's really fun for him. The next section of the book is about vision, how we all need a vision at every point of life. And some of you might remember those human resource days when you'd go in for a job interview and the interviewer would say, well, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And it seems like an unlikely question to be asking oneself now without the punchline being, well, like, hopefully alive. But it's a really important question, I think even more so in this stage of life as one gets older. How do you want to live your life? Who do you want to be in this third chapter? I've thought a lot about that. And I know for me that my spiritual path has become really, really simple. It comes down to, I want to be grateful and I want to be kind. And the last section of the book is about laughter, because we all know that laughter gets us through the rough times. Laughter gets us through the trying times. And it's the bookend to grief. There is loss and there is love. There is tragedy and there is comedy. And that's just the duality of life. So, welcome again to this book launch. And I'm going to read to you something from A Delightful Little Book on Aging. This is called What We Lose and What We Gain. Now, I start each of my chapters out with this little quote. The quotes are my own. It's very strange to be quoting myself, but I'm going to anyway. Here's the quote. The third act is the most exciting place in the story. It's where transformation happens. It's the pinnacle, the high point of the story, the harvest. A friend of mine is limping into his 60s with a sense of loss of youth, energy, and significance. I understand all of that. And I believe that most of us go through a passage where we grieve the younger life we've left behind. As someone who's written for years about the transformative forces of grief, I've come to realize that the threshold of loss is only the beginning of a remarkable journey. It is a journey that must be claimed for oneself, lest we get stuck in mourning what once was. Here are a few of the things that I've lost and gained. Youth. My skin will never be as firm as it once was, and my booty, in spite of my best efforts to keep it perky with exercise, is sagging anyway. The attractiveness of youth gives way, however, to a deep and unwavering acceptance of the circle of life. Every single wrinkle and line has been earned, a face map that says where we've been and how we've been weathered, and the journey of aging invites us to grow into a deeper beauty. It's no longer the smile on our face as much as it is the expression of our hearts. Energy and priority. When I retired, every volunteer board within a 20-mile radius came at me like a heat-seeking missile. I quickly learned that I had to choose carefully what I invested in because I can't do it all. A waning energy has helped me prioritize what is truly important. The intention of the heart is still as strong as ever, but the energy in the body is changing. This is a good time to journal about what is truly important in this part of your life. Get clarity. My list is short. Time in nature, hiking with hubby and dog, writing every morning, and preparing one great meal a day that uses as many fresh things from the garden as possible. Significance. This one is on us. It's true that we are not as valuable a consumer as we once were, but that's the only significance that we lose. We reclaim our significance when we create a conscious vision for our 60s, 70s, and beyond. What gives us a sense of purpose? What is fulfilling and satisfying? What's on the bucket list? What is truly important for the remainder of my life? So that's a little introduction to grief and to aging. And in this time of grief, because there certainly is a lot of it in the culture right now, I want to share that I see grief as a passage that is really a bridge. It's a bridge to an unknown. There's great sorrow when we lose something. And if we honor the grief by going through the process of it, that means letting ourselves cry, let ourselves feel deeply, letting ourselves wail and rage. Grief becomes this bridge to a greater potential, a greater possibility. Human beings are amazingly sensitive, but we're amazingly resilient too. And as an older person who lives with a sense of vulnerability all the time, I have a great hope for our society, for our culture, that we're going to navigate the waters of this coronavirus thing. And we're going to become better human beings as a result of it. I think that's what aging is doing for me. I'm navigating the waters of a greater vulnerability, a greater loss. And yet somehow all of that is texturing my heart to be more compassionate. And I feel like it's making me a better person. Okay, I'm going to read another one. This is a little essay about a friend of mine who's been my friend for well over 40 years now. Hard to believe. This is called The Long Road to Mother. And Kitty, if you're listening, this one's for you. An enthusiastic grief is what pushed my friend forward. The etymology of the word enthusiasm comes from the Greek word enthus, which means inspired in spirit. In the month of November, I used the excuse of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, to bang out as much of a draft on a new project as I can. It's demanding. I'm not one of those writers who will tell you how much I love the process. I'm one of those writers who fights with herself every day about word count, plot points, scenes that work or don't work. Truthfully, I'm a train wreck to be around when I'm writing. I don't care what's going on in the lives of other people. I only care about cranking out a couple thousand words every day. But here I am today with something so important burning inside of me that I'm breaking away from my work to tell a different story, a story that is bigger than me and is begging me to write it down. Like I said, this one's for you, Kitty. Kitty and I met when we were 20. I can't tell you exactly how. It was something to do with a party at a naked lady magazine she worked for, a joint that we smoked on the fire escape, and the chocolate cake that kept calling our names. We were at a time in our lives when a person can meet someone and recognize immediately that the person will be a friend forever. I recognized her. We became roommates within months of that first meeting and lived a rich 1970s experience. Our 20s were replete with a house in Laurel Canyon where you could often find a stray musician who had stopped by to play us a new song, a box of grass and rolling paper sitting on the coffee table. Our friends were runners at the music publishing companies' houses and record companies. They worked hard and would grow up to become executives one day, wielding power and arrogance and self-importance with the best of them. But in the 1970s, we were all just a bunch of kids trying to figure out how to do life. Dancing until the bars closed, listening to music, working on less than 4 hours of sleep, and waking up excited about every day. In some ways, it was a shallow but terribly enjoyable existence that only looks good on a 20-something. And Kitty? Well, Kitty was the one I recognized, and she recognized me. So we took time with each other that we didn't take with other people. We took time to learn each other's story and family early on. I knew that Kitty was adopted and that she was on a search. Who was her mother, her father? Why was she given up for adoption? It was silently painful and unfulfilled longing that would be somewhat abated by age, marriage, and a child of her own, but a longing nonetheless that was never far from her, the background noise of life that just couldn't be tuned out. Life happened to us and we happened to life. And here in our 60s, when everything fast forwarded so much more quickly than I ever thought it would, Kitty found her mother. I would betray her by offering the details of who the woman is or the why of it all. But I can share that Kitty went to visit her. She emailed me a short clip from a video that her husband took of the reunion. Her birth mother is a gentle Southern woman holding on to her daughter while crying. "You are mine." Kitty's hand caressing the woman's cheek, the laughter that escaped from them as a rush of emotion showed on their faces, grief for what had never been, and gratitude for what now was. This video, Kitty's story, this is what was most important than today's word count on a damn novel. More important than my self-involved surrender to the latest love-hate writing project. This is the happy resolve to my friend's lifetime longing, a story that demonstrates that the power of love is stronger than we ever really understand. The rest of the story, well, that's for Kitty to tell. And I do believe that she will write it down one day. That will be the real conclusion. To my dearest friend, the one who inspired me to write, who is far from home, meeting her birth mother with hugs and kisses, deep understanding and few regrets. You rock my world, Kitty, and I'm so happy for your reunion. So, I have one more thing that I'm going to read, and then I think it's enough. I think it's hard to watch these videos of people that go on too long. So brevity is the rule of the day. And thank you for hanging in there with me. This last piece is called The Wild Viewpoint from Childhood. There's no going back to get it right. Truth is, I never really figured out life anyway. I just made peace with it. When I was 4, my parents divorced and my father relocated to Glacier National Park, which was a whole different palette of nature from Carlsbad's desert. The change created an interesting phenomenon in my life. What with everyone's angst and all the new beginnings, I became totally unsupervised. A psychologist might call it abandonment, but it's not like I was neglected. I was just left alone and I learned to make the most of it. In the winter, in the park where my dad lived, I climbed up the steep hill next to his cabin and rode a sled to the bottom, squealing all the way. In the summer, I loved to watch the rain, warm and pounding when it unleashed from the skies with great gray power and beauty. One day I got the idea that I should be outside in that rain instead of watching it from the window. No one was around to tell me no. Out the back door I went, got on my tricycle, not bothering with shoes, and began riding through the neighborhood, pedaling hard through the puddles and loving how the warm water soaked my clothes, hair, and skin. A woman who also happened to be the local sitting judge saw me, stopped her car, and demanded that I get in. She put my tricycle in the trunk and drove me to her house, where I was toweled off and given an oversized shirt to wear while my clothes were in the dryer. Then she called my father. I was told to sit in the living room, where she turned on the television for me. The show that was on was called The Oral Roberts Healing Hour. Oral Roberts talked about sickness and injury and told his audience to put their hand on the television screen. Then he would yell, "Heal, God, heal," as though he were talking to a pack of dogs instead of people. I wanted to see what it felt like, so I put my hand on the television screen. As Oral Roberts was yelling, "Heal, God, heal," I had my little hand pressed against the screen, and my father walked into the room. He had on his national park uniform with a plastic thing over his hat that kept it dry. And as he looked down at me, he seemed to grow taller. Water dripped off his hat, and he said, "Am I raising a moron?" I wanted to tell him no. Today I would have said, "No, you're raising a wild child." But nothing came out of my mouth that day, and then it was too late. He gathered me up and we went home. I don't remember being punished. I was probably off into the woods the next day looking for another adventure. That was my last summer as a wild child. As I got a little older, I became interested in being like other girls. Matching my shoes and belts grew more important than exploring new places. By the time I was 17, I was ready to leave home and explore again. Now, 17 is way too young to leave home. But having learned self-reliance at such an early age, it wasn't that big a deal. I got into a lot of trouble when I left home. And like riding a tricycle in the rain, some of it was great fun. Remembering this makes me smile. I feel like I'm re-entering those wild times. It's not so much a place, the wild, as it is a state of mind. And I'm finally old enough that I no longer confuse recklessness with wildness. Wild is more an authenticity that speaks truth without worrying about what others may think. Wild is the rawness of heart that drinks in the world in all its pain and all its joy. Wild is crying when the full moon rises and the geese fly overhead. I believe that the wild, that's what will carry me home. Well, thanks for being at my book launch. Thanks for listening to some of my stories. I hope that you'll buy my book, a delightful little book on aging. There it is again. And I really wish you were here. I wish I could serve you cupcakes and champagne. And I don't know why that combination, it just sounds kind of whimsical and wild and fun. Don't forget to find the whimsy and the joy in these days. Keep your wild heart close by. Thanks very much for being here. I send you my heartfelt love and appreciation. Leave me a message. Mwah.